Hi, I'm Chad with Move Forward Guitar. This lesson is from our series, How to Memorize Guitar Notes. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you the layout of the fretboard. First off, if you like all the diagrams from this series, including the diagrams from this lesson, you can download our free e-guide, Memorize Guitar Notes. But I am working on it right now as I'm filming this lesson, so it might not be available as you're watching the lesson. But once it is available, a link will pop up on the screen that will allow you to download it. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to download it when it is available. This is part 4 from our series, How to Memorize Guitar Notes. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So in the last lesson, I showed you how you can start learning all the note names on your fretboard just by going in alphabetical order, starting with the open strings. I just explained that if you start with any of the open strings, just go in the alphabetical order using the musical alphabet, meaning that you start over after G, and you can just follow along horizontally, finding all the note names up to the 10th fret. In this lesson, I'm going to start breaking apart the fretboard for you and showing how things are laid out so that we can use other tricks that'll really help speed up the process for memorizing note names on the fretboard. So first thing I want to touch on is how the guitar is tuned. And between each string, so if we were to go from E to A to D to D to G and then B to E, between all those strings the guitar is tuned in what's called perfect fourths. So if we were to look at the natural notes of the musical alphabet, if I was to start on E and counted 1, 2, 3, 4, because E is my 6th string, now I know my 5th string is A. So that's what it means when you're talking about perfect fourths. If you just count these up in 4, you're going to end up with the next note. So you already know that E is your 6th string. I count up 4, I get back to A. So once I get to G, I just need to start over at the beginning because that's the musical alphabet. Now I know A is my 5th string. If I count up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, I know that D is my 4th string. If I count up 4 from the D, I get 1, 2, 3, 4. That means G is my 3rd string. And then I can't do it from G, which I'll explain in just a moment. But then if I go to the 2nd string and count up to the 1st string, I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then E is my 1st string. So that's what it means to count up in fourths. So from E to A you count up 4, A to D you count up 4, D to G you count up 4, and B to E you count up 4. The only place it's different is from G to B. That's where the guitar gets tuned differently. So everything between all the other notes are what are called perfect fourths. In between G and B is what's called a major third. And we're just talking about intervals right now, but you don't have to worry too much about what perfect fourth or major third means. If we just look back here, if I was to start on G, which is my 3rd string, and count up 3 this time, now it's 1, 2, 3. Now B is my 2nd string. So if I count from E to A to D, D to G, and B to E, I would count up 4. When I go between G and B, I count up 3. So that means if I had notes that I was fretting on the fretboard, from here to here would be a perfect fourth away, just like it is with the open strings. From here to here would be the same thing, a perfect fourth. From here to here would be a perfect fourth. But when I get to G, to get a perfect fourth from G to B, I have to move up 1 fret to get that perfect fourth. So that means anytime you hit the 2nd string, you have to move this note up half a step to equal the same distance as you got when they look like this on the fretboard. And that might be confusing right now. We're going to talk more about this later. It'll make sense later. But just know that once something hits the 2nd string, the shape has to change if you want to keep the same distance between notes. You have to move this note up half a step. Again, don't worry too much about that right now. We're going to talk about that as we go through this lesson. But that's an important thing to understand with the tuning of a guitar, that everything is tuned in perfect fourths except the G to B is a major third. Next thing to understand is that everything that happens with the open strings happens on the 12th fret, and it's what's called an octave higher. It's 12 frets apart. And your 12th fret usually has a double marker of some sort to indicate the 12th fret. So that means my E, A, D, G, B, E, my open strings, it's the exact same notes in the 12th fret. So the 12th fret is E, A, D, G, B, E as well. It's just all these notes are what are called an octave higher. So they're higher in pitch, but they're the same note. And an octave is 12 frets apart. So from this E to this E, they're both the same note, but this E is an octave higher, so it's going to sound higher in pitch. So really what that means is that everything that happens right here on your fretboard just repeats itself here. And then it depends how high your fretboard goes. If it's an acoustic guitar, it might not go very much farther than the 12th fret. If it's an electric guitar, it could go quite a bit farther. So it just depends. So basically, everything from the 12th fret up is pretty much a mini version of what's down here. And it's just everything up here is an octave higher than what's down here. But they're going to have the same note name. So what that means is, if I were to have a note right here, if I was to play in the 1st fret on the 6th string, 12 frets higher would be the exact same note in octave higher. So these are both F notes. This is an F note and this is an F note. Or I could go up to right here. This would be the exact same note because it's an octave higher. So same note name, it's just higher in pitch. And it doesn't matter what string I'm on, it'd be the same thing. If I was to play a note right here, 12 frets higher, this would be the same note, just an octave higher. And you can see that the fret markers mimic each other. So right here is the 3rd fret, this is the 7th fret, and they have markers. Well, right here you have a marker, and right here you have a marker, and you can see this note's landing on a marker right there, and this one's landing on the same marker in octave higher. So that's just something really important to understand about your guitar, which simplifies things a lot, is that everything that happens after the 12th fret, from the 12th fret on, is the same as what's happening down here from the open strings. And then it just depends how high your frets go to how many of these frets will get mimicked up here. Now another thing important to understand, which I'm sure you already understand because I already mentioned it, is that everything that happens on the 6th string happens on the 1st string. So your low 6th string is an E, your high 1st string is an E as well. And it doesn't matter where you are on the fretboard, these two notes are the same, these two notes are the same, these two notes are the same. They have the same note name, but they're in different octaves. And this time they're actually 2 octaves apart. So what I was showing from the open strings to 12th fret was 1 octave apart, which is 12 frets apart on your guitar. 2 octaves apart would be 24 frets, and most guitars don't have 24 frets. Some do, but a lot have less than 24 frets. So it wouldn't even be possible to play on one string except from the open string up to the 24th fret if you have a guitar that goes up 24 frets. So that's just important to understand that everything on the 6th string happens on the 1st string in the exact same fret. It's just they're 2 octaves apart, but they have the same note name. For example, these two notes are both Fs, just 2 octaves apart, meaning that this one is 2 octaves higher than this one, so it's going to sound higher in pitch, but it's the same note name. And another thing to understand is that this is an octave apart right here from the open string to the 12th fret, but this is an octave apart as well. From this note to this note, they're both E's, but an octave apart. And actually it goes in more octaves, which we'll talk about later, but I just want to point this out. And also you have on the guitar, which makes it more complicated than like a piano, you have what are called unison notes. So for example, this note to this note is an octave apart, but this note, and this note are the exact same notes. They're what are called unison notes. So they're all E notes, but they're the exact same pitch. They're going to sound a little different on the guitar because where you play on the guitar and the gauge of your string makes it sound a little different, but these are technically the exact same notes, unison notes. This to this, or this to this, or this to this are all an octave apart. So that can be pretty confusing on the guitar to have to deal with unison notes, but I'm going to make that simpler and show you ways to visualize that as well. And then anything that happens, the shape stays the same no matter where you move it. So these are all E notes, these are all F notes. The distances still stay the same, where this is an octave, this is an octave, this is an octave, and these are all unison notes. It's just now you're on a different spot on the fretboard. So no matter what you do on the fretboard, the shape's going to stay the same when you're dealing with the same string sets. If you just move it up, it doesn't matter. This shape stays the same as this. It's just now you're on F notes instead of E notes. And I can move that shape anywhere now. These are A notes with the same distances just like the E and the F notes. This is an octave, this is an octave, this is an octave, and these are unison notes. And there's more octaves and more unisons than what I'm showing right now. I just want to give you a basic overview of it, and I'm going to really break this down in future lessons and show you how you can use this. But this lesson, I really want to break apart the fretboard and start showing you little things that you need to start understanding about how the guitar works. And the guitar is harder to understand for understanding where all the notes are than a piano, because the piano just moves horizontally. You start low down here with your lowest pitch, and going up to the right goes to your highest pitch. Guitar, if you start down here with your lowest pitch, you can go up to a higher pitch this way, but you can also go up and pitch this way, so that gets really confusing, and then you end up with what are called unison notes, which you don't have on the piano. And it's something that takes some time to really understand how the guitar is laid out, but this is really important for helping you learn where all your notes are and to learn it faster than if you're just to memorize them horizontally. So now if you have all the notes that we looked at in the last lesson, if you were going horizontally, you had all these, but now you also have these notes, which are the 12th fret, and you also have, as far as your frets go, the same thing up here. So everything that's happening down here is happening up here. And what I have drawn here is going to the 18th fret. Your guitar might go higher. If you have an electric, it probably does go higher. But everything that I've drawn would be from here. This would all be mimicked in octave higher. And like I said, if your guitar goes higher, you'd catch some of these notes as well. So when you're memorizing your fretboard, you only have to memorize the notes up to the 11th fret where they land, because everything from the 12th fret up just is repeating down here from what's up here. It still takes time to practice that and visualize that, but really you just have to visualize it as your main fretboard kind of, and then this is like a mini fretboard up here, just repeating everything that's happening down here, but it's an octave higher. So that's a basic overview of how the fretboard is laid out. This isn't something I expect you just to get right away and be able to visualize. We're going to go over this many more times, but it's important to start here because now we can start systematizing the fretboard and finding different ways to memorize where the notes land, and this will really help you do that. And you can always come back to this lesson as an overview, but I'll go over it more and more as we're going through the other lessons. So go ahead and move on to the next lesson, where I'm going to talk about octave shapes and how that can really help you memorize where the notes are. And be sure to download the e-guide. All the diagrams are in there, and be sure to subscribe because we had at least one new lesson every day.